Welcome back, everyone, to part two. I didn't title this yet, but this is part two with Sue. And the last discussion, we talked about Alcoholics Anonymous and misdiagnosing mental health. You get sent to Alcoholics Anonymous, or maybe a doctor or a therapist sends you to Alcoholics Anonymous. You get into a detox, you go to rehab, and there's a lot of misdiagnosis going on in there. And you check that all out, as Sue explained her story, her life experience with all that on the last podcast. So don't forget to go back to Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming podcast on part one. But we're going to get back, and Sue's we stopped at 18. So Sue's going to go from 18 to 33. What happened, how her life was. We were talking prior, and she kind of she wasn't even on any meds from 18 to 33, and she wasn't drinking either. And she was just kind of living life, went to college. And tell us a little bit about that, Sue.
Yeah, it just kind of your average story. I went to college. Once I got out of college, I got a job in my field, and I did what your typical young adult did. I hung out with my friends. I dated guys. And anxiety, unfortunately, was always in the backdrop of that, because I chose not to go on any other medication once I came off the Klonopin. I was continued to be plagued by panic attacks, and I would always have family and friends that would try to convince me to go on meds, but I really just didn't want to. I'd always heard about the effects of it. People can have weird side effects and stuff. And I really enjoyed my 20s. So I think that helped during that time, even though that was always, I don't even want to say in the backdrop, because, panic attacks, they could get pretty bad at some point. But I think that just that lifestyle of coming into your own and becoming an adult, I loved it so much that it helped overshadow all that.
Yeah, you were enjoying life. So at 30, what age were you when you got married?
I was 31, actually, when 30, I got married. I had 31. Met my husband I met him when I was 30, and we got married when I was 31.
So Sue, so you met your love of your life at 30, got married at 31, and then let's continue from there. I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and then I had my daughter when I was just under 32, and it was when she was a year and a half old. So I was 33. That I tried to go back to work, because I had stopped going to work when she was a newborn. And I tried to go back to work on third shift, and I couldn't do it. And I was losing sleep. I could not sleep. I went to my doctor, and he said, well, you know what? I think you're depressed. And he knew I had anxiety, but he also thought it was depression. He said, depression can cause insomnia. And he prescribed me Prozac and Ativan. Ativan, again, being in the same class of drugs as the Klonopin. And the Prozac, instead of helping anything, it helped nothing. It made my insomnia worse. And I had about 2 months of maybe an hour or two of sleep at night. And that was with she was barely even a toddler at that point. She was a year and a half old. And that was probably the second time that my anxiety had become just completely debilitating. When you can't sleep and you have anxiety, they both feed on each other, and it was a vicious cycle. But I was able to figure out that, this Prozac, through doing some research, found out that insomnia was one of the main side effects. And they took me off. He took me off, put me on Lexapro, and things started to even out. And actually also, instead of Ativan, again, that benzodiazepine I was talking about, they put me back on Klonopin, which I had been on when I was younger, if you recall me talking about that. So I was on Lexapro and Klonopin at that point, and that cocktail seemed to kind of really jive with me. It kind of, my sleep slowly but surely got back to normal. And
let the audience know, ladies and gentlemen, that you didn't have any problematic drinking. You weren't even drinking was not even an issue up until now, right?
oh yeah, no, definitely.
No,
like
it wasn't even an issue. She wasn't.
right.
Right.
Through my 20s and everything, I went out and partied with my friends and everything, maybe a couple times here and there, had a few too many, but no, I was actually, I was usually the sober one at the end of the night. That was always the joke. But yeah, no, and I definitely, that time around with not being able to sleep, it never really dawned on me, maybe if I drink, it'll make things feel better. So that wasn't even a problem then.
Did the doctors ever talk about that? No, I'm not up on it, but when women have children, they have this post-traumatic kind of thing that goes on too.
Yeah, I'm not it's postpartum depression.
Yeah, did that have any?
No, I don't believe so.
No, okay. It was your stuff from years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but
that
again,
was resurfacing and stuff from years ago, and all this stuff was triggering it.
Yeah, it was, but that was always a missing piece, because through my 20s, I would, through my young adulthood, I would go to counselors, and it just always seemed like it again, they weren't misdiagnosing. I definitely had anxiety. I definitely had OCD, but there was something deeper there. And so it wasn't really a matter of misdiagnosing. It was more of a matter of not being fully diagnosed. And that missing link was the trauma. And yeah, a lot of that stuff started surfacing, but again, things leveled out with the medication, and I was able to get back on my feet. I got a really good job in nuclear security. And then in 2018, like I had discussed in the previous podcast, I had a few health scares, and my anxiety went into just full-blown crisis mode. I had to leave my job. I could barely do anything. If I wanted to calm my stomach enough to eat, I would have to pace back and forth. So I'd get a plate of food and I'd pace back and forth. And that was when the drinking became problematic. And we've gone that part of my life. So
that was part one, ladies and gentlemen, part one. So you can go over to part one and check out all that information that Sue laid out on her life experience from as early as 7 years old to today. Today we're going to get into. But would you agree then, Sue, that trauma in itself has this effect and creates these symptoms of anxieties and different types of phobias and different layers of
oh yeah, for sure. It I say this so much, it's probably people get sick of it and it sounds like a mantra, but it really just, your life just becomes smaller. What you allow yourself to experience and enjoy, and it just becomes so small. But it hadn't been brought to the surface yet. It hadn't been really looked into and fully diagnosed. That kind of came out over the past couple of years, with the drinking and the behaviors behind the drinking.
So you really started to connect the dots, like I think you mentioned, connect the dots with all the symptoms and the trauma.
Exactly. That's exactly how it felt when my counselor finally said the words PTSD, it's like I was able to connect the dots.
I'm going to just read trauma. What I wrote down here is the restriction of your capacity to respond in the present moment with the authentic self. It's almost like what, we talk a lot about shadow work, and a lot of people talk about inner child work or bringing the subconscious up to the conscious. It's a lot. It sounds like you're really starting to get into this more now than all the other years that you've been going to counseling and stuff. Because I would say, because a lot of social media, there's a lot of YouTube, there's a lot of information. People like to stay away from the YouTube channels, and they're going to give you false information and misinformation. Well, I'm finding out there's a lot of beautiful different things in there.
Oh, I agree with you. I don't, I can't agree with people when they say stay away from social media. And people love to say that to people that have anxiety. I don't agree. And again, just my opinion. That's just my opinion. But for me, you kind of have to be an adult about it and filter out the things that are bad. But there really are so many wonderful things, life-saving things sometimes.
Yes, I totally agree.
I would have never stumbled across other people, and there's so many that know that the ideas that the addiction industry puts out there, like powerlessness and disease and incurable disease and just that hopeless, meaningless life afterwards, that's all there would be for me if there wasn't social media. I would never know that people like you, or the people that, even with some of my disagreements with the freedom model, with them, I wouldn't know that they existed. I wouldn't know that groups like, Leaving AA existed, or, it's just, there's such a wealth of knowledge out there. And again, you have to be the adult at that point and filter out what's good and bad and what sits with you and what doesn't. But isn't that what we have to do with life anyways?
Exactly. We're discovering. I say uncover, recover, and discover. I say think, question, observe, and become aware. I'm going to just say this now. We are not providing any medical advice here, me or Sue. Okay. You want to get some information. You're beginning to learn something about yourself, and you're discovering some symptoms, and you feel like you got some problematic issues. Consult your mental health care professional. We're talking about, look, eventually where Sue is today, you're talking from 7 years to I think Sue's 43 now. I can give her age out. That's many, many, many years. Okay. So we're promoting throughout. Do your own research after, while you're being treated with a healthcare professional. Still do your own research. And eventually, what I'm discovering, people becoming their own healthcare advocates, because after all, this is all a self-discovery, it's self-analysis, it's self-help, and it's self-awareness, So that's what we're providing here. We're providing and expressing our life experience about what we have discovered through many years of research and gathering information and knowledge on our own. So in the beginning, check it out. Make sure you check your healthcare professionals out, and always do your research with that too. Okay, referrals. Make sure you're going to a professional that understands you, and you kind of have a nice relationship with. That's just a suggestion. So,
hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where did we leave off?
We're just talking about, I was just talking, let's see, we left off at you becoming aware. You kind of becoming your own advocate now, and kind of becoming aware of self-awareness, and you're still on this discovery, and we're talking about how social media can really help us.
Yeah. It over the past couple of years, some of those couple of years, I was doing some heavy drinking, but after coming home from rehab last summer, a lot of that stuff, once the fog kind of cleared, because like I said, I came home with Stockholm syndrome because I had to join them. I couldn't leave them. I had to join them. You know, they say if you can't beat them, join them. I couldn't beat them, and I couldn't leave. And I just had to try to allow myself to be brainwashed. You know, and coming home and saying that they saved me. And once that fog cleared, and I realized how messed up, you know, it all was, you know, I had to take a really hard look at things that I was doing. I wasn't doing anything with my life. I was home trying to be a housewife. That's just not who I am. Certainly not knocking that. It's not an easy job, but I wasn't doing it because that was something I enjoyed doing. I had essentially just taken on the identity of this person who was completely consumed by their anxiety to the point that they were harming themselves, you know, drinking myself to a slow death. And I wasn't going to do that anymore. And I'd love to give this story about how some kind of miraculous thing happened in counseling or whatever. And I had a fabulous counselor. She helped me through a lot, but at that point I had been with her for 3 years, and I couldn't talk about this stuff anymore, because the more I talked, the more I just ruminated on really bad parts of my life. And I didn't want to be identified by that anymore. And it just clicked in me that I deserved a fulfilling life, that even with PTSD and the anxiety that goes along with that, I can have a fulfilling life. I'm going to have quirks for the rest of my life. Most of us do. But I was essentially punishing myself. I wasn't doing it consciously, you know, but I was punishing myself. I was becoming just a shell. I remember saying that to people. I feel like a shell of who I was. And I didn't want that anymore.
Sounds like you started, this happens a couple years now. This has been going on for a couple years. You kind of let go of the identity that was given to you. You say, yes, I have these symptoms, but that's not who I am. Okay, that's
Exactly.
not my identity. It's just like when you go into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and they give you an identity and they say, I am alcoholic. No, we are not alcoholic. My grandson is not he's not a diabetic. He has diabetes. Okay, we have anxiety. Okay, that's not who we are. Okay,
Right.
so we're not allowing these labels to identify us. We are human beings, being human, with some symptoms of underlying unresolved, maybe trauma, maybe not. You know, but we're dealing with it and we're accepting it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I'm trying to now identify with those things that I really should have been identified. You know, it's being a mother, doing those little things that, you know, taking my daughter back and forth to dance. She's a phenomenal dancer. Taking her back and forth to dance class, you know, just having those responsibilities and kind of relishing that, being back in the workforce and having a paycheck again, and being a partner to my husband, because this whole thing was very wearing on him. You know, it's, I'm a very blessed woman to have him. And we had our issues, and he would even admit to, you know, he didn't know how to handle, the anxiety at first, and he could be kind of cruel at times, but he has worked on himself. So to be a partner again to my husband, and to be a mother again to my daughter, instead of just this shell of, like you said, you know, the person with anxiety, the person with PTSD, and then the last one, which I will never allow ever again to be uttered from my mouth, an alcoholic, ever, never. And I also, over the past several years, shed the identity of what everyone knew me to be, which was, you know, the good Catholic girl.
Yeah, let's talk about that. First of all, I want to congratulate Sue. Thank you so much for your courage. It takes a lot of courage, strength, patience, and to come on a podcast like this and talk about your life. I just can commend you. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And we're going to continue, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to subscribe to Anonymous Addiction and join us at Anonymous Addiction at My Truth About AA, as Bobby C sees it on Facebook. But Sue, let's get into that religion. Let's get into religion. I think you were talking about it started about age 13, 12, 13.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us about it. What happened?
Well, during the 90s, it was the charismatic movement in the Catholic Church was huge at that time. And I got involved in it. And I used to go to a youth group, and I would go to youth conferences. And what went hand in hand with that was the purity movement. Saving yourself from marriage and pretty much anything that you could think of that a normal teenager goes through, going through puberty and their bodily changes. It's like everything was a sin. You look at a guy and you thought about him for too long, and that was a sin. And that really messes with your head after a while, because, along with believing that something is a sin is the belief that you could go to hell, that you could face an eternal punishment for it. And that has its own trauma attached to it. And there's a lot of people now kind of in my age group, because that purity movement was so big in the 90s and into the early turn of the century. You got a lot of people my age that have finally been able to work through that. Even married couples that talk about how it affected their sex life, because you're everything, you're made to feel guilty about it. And it's not the easiest to talk about, not because I'm embarrassed to talk about subjects like this, but because I think a lot of people are a little bit shocked when they hear me say what I'm about to say, which is, I'm not happy that it wasn't till my late 20s that I was able to let go of all that stigma and all of that guilt and allow myself to be, completely, to have sex with a man. I feel like a part of my young adulthood was kind of robbed of me. And that's not me saying that I wish that I had irresponsible relationships or encounters or anything like that. I wish that my late teenage years into my young adulthood years wasn't bogged down with that guilt, and that again, I used the word trauma, that carries its own trauma, because you pretty much think your body is betraying you, because your body, when it's going through changes, your sexuality is a big part of that, and that's what they harp on. So it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? My body is betraying my immortal soul. And then not just that, but so not to just focus on that side of it, but also the idea of just pray. You've got to just pray. If you pray, it's like the Bible verse, knock and you shall receive. Well, that's not how it works. And I'm sure that there's plenty of people that view your podcasts and are in your Facebook group that are religious people. I certainly don't knock it because I've been there. But for me, it just really messed with my head. Praying to a God that did not hear my prayers. And people could proselytize me. Oh, he answers. It's just sometimes it's no, or sometimes, listen, you can't try to evangelize me, because I was the evangelizer at one point.
How about the
I know
tornado? The tornado you
Bible verse.
mentioned.
Yeah, I know the Bible verses you're going to throw at me. It's I had to let go of the magic man in the sky. I don't believe in the God of the Bible anymore. Where I'm at spiritually, I don't know. When I look at an infinite universe, I tend to believe that there's got to be some kind of infinite energy, but I don't believe in the God of the Bible anymore. And for me, I do feel like, not allowing myself what most people at as a normal teenage years and a young adulthood, I think it kind of stunted my growth. And that makes me wonder, is that why I got into heavy drinking? I know that the reason that I got into heavy drinking was really to try to medicate the anxiety, but that preference for heavy drinking, which usually comes in your early 20s, I really squashed that, because that was a sin too. Drunkenness was a sin, and it's like it stunted my maturity.
Yes.
And
yes.
I regret that.
Yeah, it sounds, you know what? Just the story you just described sounds like the years that I spent in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. They have a thing called Alateen. They have Al-Anon, Alateen. Alateen, the young kids, they go to these wicked pods. They all gather because, it's a family disease, which we know it's not, but then they get the
Right.
whole family into it. So it's almost like the Puritan, like you're describing, is Alateen, where they're getting all the children to believe. And it sounds like it's based just like Alcoholics Anonymous in fear, guilt, and shame,
Absolutely.
and so fear, guilt, and shame can control us. But so 13, yes, you're combining this deprogramming from religion, from the disease concept, from these labels. So you've been deprogramming, we're reprogramming ourselves now. This podcast is called Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming, but it really is a reprogramming podcast, because as we look into it, we're reprogramming our minds and kind of coming to ourselves and understand ourselves, the truth about ourselves, society, and the world. Continue more about that, the religion part, and how do you think it really affected you, and when did you let that go?
It really wasn't a definite moment in time. It's been over the course of several years of being able to let go of the guilt, of believing that there's some kind of a place called hell where you're eternally punished for things that aren't even wrong. That takes a lot. Because that fear is really ingrained in you. Yeah, it's hard to really outline that process, because it's a very personal one. You know what I mean? It's because those are very personal things.
Well, like see, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talked about the character defects, and they talked about the 7 deadly sins. They're always talking about the sins, and they're talking about giving your life and your will over to the care of God, which is AA. When they say God, it's AA. So I can relate to all that. Today, it sounds like you're agnostic. You're into some spiritual stuff. You're evolving. It sounds like just the same as I am, into what you find truth today, what your truth is.
Yes. I don't have to, because the big thing was, you find your worth in God. I don't have to find my worth in a God. I'm a worthy, if you want to use that word, because I'm a living being just like anybody else. Not because I was supposedly created. That's not where my worth lies. I'm tired of identifying myself by something other than myself. I've done that all my life, and I'm so over that. the easy part of it is letting go of kind of the ridiculous things like, well, women can't be priests. It is just, a load of crap, or homosexuality is a sin, and they can't get married. And it just, those things are the easy things. It's how it affected you internally, which is why I brought up the very personal evolution of coming out of the purity movement, because again, that's ingrained in you as again part of your worth. You've got to keep yourself pure. This is what God wants from you. And
I know.
And to be able to let go of that, it's really a deep, it's trusting yourself.
Right.
It's trusting yourself and what your own intuition tells you.
Right. It's almost like a bond. It's like when you were in there and I was in where I was, it feels like a bondage. I'm bound to this belief, and I'm in bondage. I'm enslaved with the ideology. And
Yes.
until I break out of that and learn that, hey, I'm free from that. And to me, I found out it was all, I believe it's all a lie. It's all control mechanism. And all these years that I was a sinner, and if I sin, I'm going to hell. What the hell? I mean, everything we do is going to be a sin. You look at somebody wrong, you think something wrong. To me, sex is like spiritual. Okay, it's like one of the best spiritual things there are is sexuality today. And to deny that a human being is denying like breathing, sun, air, and water. So
And
yeah.
that's why it's such a personal journey, because it's hard. It's really hard to describe. It's something you have to come to terms with and be at peace with. And like I said, trust yourself. Stop feeling like you have to trust. That's the biggest thing in AA. They put the cotton in your, or take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. In other words, they're telling you to shut up. They always want you to shut up, and someone always knows better than you, and you're powerless, and you're not powerless.
That's right. And our voices, we need to speak out. Our voices allow us, if we believe in prayer or meditation, the prayer would be me talking, me sharing, my voice is a prayer. Okay. It's you want to talk about meditation, me listening to Sue, me being attentive to Sue is meditation. So yeah. These words can really mess with us. We're doing these great things every day as human beings. So we have 4 minutes left. So we got a couple minutes. What else do you want to talk about with that, the religion deprogramming part of it?
Well, really, not much left to say there. There was something that you mentioned that really was poignant to me. In control, that word control, you said from the AA point of view versus the religion point of view, which really AA is a religion. That's exactly what they try to, and it's not just AA. Once again, like I said in the last podcast, once alcohol is in the picture, people forget everything else. They forget the pain that you've been through. They forget the reason that you're doing this to yourself. And I found that everyone around me wanted to control me. And that is, and I understand that some of it, a lot of it came from concern. A lot of it came from their own anger of just watching me, do stupid stuff when I was drunk, or just the fact that I was hurting my body. But it was real easy for people around me to just jump at the chance to say, okay, well, you're never ever drinking in my presence again. You're never doing this at my house again. But do you think for 1 second that they ever stopped drinking? No, because it is about control. And I'm not going to allow that in my life anymore. And I don't mean that in a way that I'm going to go around being some kind of, I've really gotten control of my life. I've regained control of my life but I have done that. I have regained control of my life. So I'm not talking about going out there and doing stupid stuff, just doing whatever you want to other people. That's horrendous. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean that I have to be kind of the captain of my own fate.
That's right. That's right. I believe that.
I'm not allowing other people and other agencies control over me and what I think.
That's what these podcasts are all about. That's why I invited you on here, because I really respect your story. It's your life journey. It's your life experience. I listened. I believe it. I resonate with it. I can relate to some things I can't, but I listen to your story, and your story is impelling, and it's inspiring, and it's all these things, and the courage that you have to come on here and share this. Anybody, I would ask anybody, you want to be anonymous? That's why it's called Anonymous Addiction, Deprogramming Podcast, Reprogramming. And Sue chose to be anonymous for a lot of reasons, and especially some reasons that people do judge, still put a stigma to us and still judge us today. So be careful about that, ladies and gentlemen out there. We have 1 minute left. You want to leave us with something, Sue?
Now, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to do this. I've never done a podcast before, so it was a really unique experience.
And I admire you for pushing back on a lot of different things, because you're where I'm kind of in the same kind of boat. We're kind of like-minded in that sense that we don't believe everything we hear. Okay, we're kind of done. We're kind of done with that because it's been imposed on us for so long. So we're kind of like setting ourselves free, and we don't believe everything we hear. We do our own research. And less than 1 minute left. Say goodbye, Sue.
Hey, thank you so much. Take care.
It's part 2. Check it out. Make sure you check out part 1. See you, Sue. Thank you so much.
Take care,
Appreciate
Bobby.
it. Bye-bye.